Hey friends, this video is for our kindergarten and first grade team for October week 2. This month we are learning the virtue of grit, refusing to give up when life gets hard. And our memory verse for this month, it's a little bit longer, so it says, "Let us not become tired of doing good. At the right time, we will gather a crop if we don't give up." Galatians 6:9. So as we continue on in our timeline, we've gone from creation to the fall to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Well, now we are at Jacob's son, Joseph. Jacob had 12 sons. Joseph was his 11th son. He was his favorite. Last week in Joseph part 1, we learned that Joseph's brothers threw him into a pit and then sold him into slavery. He became the top slave in Potiphar's house, but then Potiphar's wife accused him of something falsely and he got thrown into prison, and that is where our story ended. Well, this week we pick up with Joseph part 2. So I'm just going to come over here and read. Joseph was in prison and forgotten, and Pharaoh had a dream that no one could interpret. The cupbearer remembered how Joseph had interpreted his dream. At once, Pharaoh sent for Joseph. With God's help, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and offered a plan for helping Egypt survive the coming famine. Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of the entire kingdom. Sure enough, everything Joseph said came true, and a famine swept across the land. Joseph's brothers made the trek down to Egypt, and they ended up right in front of Joseph. After some back and forth, Joseph couldn't stand it any longer. He revealed himself to his brothers and offered them forgiveness for everything. Joseph brought his whole family down to Egypt, and God used Joseph and his circumstances to save the Israelites and fulfill his promise to Abraham. So our bottom line for this week, hold on, because there's a bigger story. When we're going through a difficult time, it's hard to imagine that it could be part of something bigger and better than we expect. Thankfully, we don't have to find grit on our own. We can trust God to give us what we need to keep going. This idea is not to diminish any pain or hurt that we might experience during our difficult time, but we can live with hope knowing that God can turn our difficulties into something better than we think possible. And he certainly did that for Joseph. So, jumping over to our leader guide, we'd love for you to join us at 8:20 and 10:20 in the garage door room for coffee and donuts and prayer. I just love this time of prayer. It is so great just knowing what's going on with everyone so I can be praying for people during the week. I really just encourage you. I know it's early, but to come for that time, it just is so great for setting my mind right for Sunday morning. Then just make sure that you're to your small group area by 8:30 and 10:30. As kids come in, they can play with toys, or we've got a coloring sheet this week, which is Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, and the kids can color that. When service starts at 9 and 11, if you'd like to, you can play this little icebreaker. You're going to have kids gather around you, and the kids are going to squat down, and you're going to call out a variety of familiar sequences, verses, songs, but you're going to omit a word, and the kids are going to fill in the blank, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when they say 5, they're going to pop up and then say the next word, and then they'll squat back down, and you'll do some other ones. So then you can head across the hall to large group, and you can kind of talk about, on that intro, like they knew the whole part of the plan. There's a bigger song to just the part that you said, and they kind of know. Well, we're going to hear a story today about someone who didn't see the whole picture, but God always does. At 10 after, you will head across to large group. When you get back from large group, while kids are eating their snack, you can use this little conversation guide to lead kids into prayer. So you're just going to say, the thing to remember today is to hold on because there's a bigger story. Joseph held on through some pretty hard times, didn't he? So you're going to set up, he held on when his brothers threw him into a pit. He held on when his brothers sold him into slavery, when he was thrown in a jail, and when he was forgotten. But God flipped all those things that had happened to Joseph upside down. You're going to curl your fingers down and point your thumb out, and he turned them into something good. So you're going to say all the things that went wrong, and then you're going to say, but God turned it into something good. And then you can close down in prayer. Dear God, help us to remember to hold on because there's a bigger, and then you have the kids say story. When bad things happen, help us to remember to hold on because there's a bigger story. When sad things help us to remember to hold on because there's a bigger story. And the kids will kind of keep filling in the blanks on that prayer. Then to review the memory verse, show kids how to look up Galatians 6:9 by looking up Galatians in the table of contents, then the big 6 and the little 9. You can practice the memory verse with the motions. And then if you'd like to, if you have time, kids can stand in a circle with all their shoulders turned toward the middle where they're facing the back of the kid in front of them. And I have a ball in your cart. They can pass the ball backwards over their head as they say the verse, as they go around and say one word at a time. And you can close by saying something like, God can see the bigger story even when we can't. He can turn things that seem upside down into things that are good. And when we know that God has a bigger story, we can hold on and not become tired of doing good. So don't give up. Hold on, because there's a bigger story. And then this last activity is going to be a fun one. You're going to make some Play-Doh. So you're going to gather kids around you, and you're going to do the big mixing. You're going to pour in 4 cups of flour, 1 cup of salt, and then add in 1.5 cups of warm water. And you're going to mix it up so that it's, the water's not sloshy. And then I've got these little sticky placemats, like what they have at Chick-fil-A, if you're familiar with that. So you can stick it down to the table for each kid. And you're going to give each kid a little ball of Play-Doh. And then I've got some food dye that is coming, and they can pick what color food dye they want, and they're going to mix it in. And they're going to get tired, and they're going to want to stop, but you're going to encourage them to show grit and keep mixing even when they want to give up. And close with something like this. This month, we're learning that it's important to have grit. Grit is refusing to give up when life gets hard. Was it hard to keep kneading that dough? Yeah, so why'd you keep doing it? Well, you knew that it would turn into something good. You knew that there was a bigger story. The same thing is true in our lives. When we refuse to give up, God can turn the difficult things into things that are good. It might take time and we might need to hold on, but God is big enough and amazing enough to work all things for good. And then kids can take home their Play-Doh dough balls in the little Ziploc baggie that I've got for them. So that is it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for serving our kindergartners and first graders. You guys are amazing, and we'll see you on Sunday.